Claire Pearsall. She's a former special advisor to a former Home Secretary, former Immigration Minister, in the Home Office, and also still joined by Sam Armstrong here in the studio, as a Conservative commentator. Good morning to you both. Claire, let's just talk through what we are hearing today, because this is Plan B for Rwanda. Personally, I thought we were all about Plan M. We've gone through so many. He wants the deportations to Rwanda to be watertight, assuming they ever happen. And he's got basically reckons that, they're going to be legal challenge after legal challenge after legal challenge. Now, this is authorising more money to go to Rwanda to improve their asylum seeker, to send over staff, also to basically, it's going to have a new treaty signed with Rwanda so that they can't send people back to their home countries where they could face persecution, and also sort of tighten up legislation here in the UK. Do you think any of this is going to make a blind difference to the chances of anyone who's arrived here on a dinghy over the Channel ever being put on a plane at Luton and flown to Rwanda?
No, this isn't going to make any difference at all. And so much as Plan B is being touted around, I thought that the Home Office was supposed to be thinking of alternatives in case Rwanda didn't happen, which they seem to have not done. So we now seem to be throwing more money at a situation which isn't getting any better. We are also now going to meddle with the judiciary of another country, which I suspect they're not particularly happy about, by stationing British judges over in Rwandan courts. Why are we spending all of this money sending our judiciary over to another country when realistically we need to be sorting out our own asylum system, not just piling good money after bad into a system which hasn't seen anybody leave the country so far since its inception in 2022? And is unlikely to do so before the next election. So you have to look at this as a little bit more of a political posturing, setting up the election ready for next May so that Rishi Sunak can go to the polls on a small boats election.
Yeah, I keep hearing about this talk of a May election. I think genuinely the Prime Minister would be insane to think that the polls are going to change. Now, if I were him, I'd wait for sort of events, dear boy, events, and something coming up that could change the polls. But certainly it's not looking very promising at the current time. Now, you say this political posturing. I think a lot of people admitted, even those people who are fully in favour of this plan say, yeah, if we can do it, great. I mean, anyone who pays any attention to the detail will either think, A, never going to happen, B, if it does happen, it's not going to make even a dent in the sort of numbers we're looking at. I mean, what's the best case scenario? What, a few hundred, maybe 1,000 people, a couple of thousand at best? I mean, we had over 500 people turn up on dinghies on Saturday, for goodness sake. This doesn't really solve the problem. It's supposed to be a signal of intent. So it doesn't really get to the number issue. Do you think the government is sort of wasting an awful lot of political capital on this when, even if the first plane takes off before the next election, whenever it is, people will go, OK, great. Now let's get the other 100,000 out.
Well, and I think that's your problem, is that initially the system can only take 200 people, perhaps a maximum of 500. When you've got a backlog of 130,000 cases in the system, we've had just shy of 29,000 people cross the Channel this year. That really is a drop in the ocean. What happens to all of those people who, since the Illegal Migration Act, have landed in the United Kingdom? So that's since July. If they're not being sent to Rwanda, where are they going?
Yeah.
Because if you don't have capacity to send people to a safe third country, you aren't going to be returning them to places like Afghanistan or Iraq. There is no agreement in place, and you aren't going to send people back to certain death. So what are you doing? It just seems a bizarre set of circumstances that the government is putting absolutely everything into a plan that Rwanda will work when they pretty much know that it's not going to.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court have some really serious concerns over the safety of individuals within Rwanda. And just by the Prime Minister coming up with a treaty to suggest that Rwanda is safe, well, that's not going to cut it. This treaty has to get through the House of Commons, the House of Lords, and then go back in front of the Supreme Court to make that decision. So what happens if it does fall apart? What happens if it doesn't get through? There are no flights. We are now, another year later, more people coming across and absolutely nowhere to put them. They haven't thought this through. They haven't looked at other countries that they could perhaps do a deal with. I know that in Europe there are deals, the Italians are doing a deal with Albania to process their claimants,
Yeah, but
not to
Albania, no,
rehome
but
them.
no, come on, no, they're sending back Albanians. They're not. I don't think they've
Yes,
said Albania's not.
no.
Albania's not taking
Italy have
another.
a plan.
Well,
Yeah.
let me bring in Sam here, because Sam Armstrong's been sitting here in the studio shaking his head as you speak. Now, you two sort of ostensibly on the same side. Claire Pearsall worked in the Home Office as Special Advisor for a minister that I think you perhaps wouldn't have been the biggest fan of. Sam Armstrong, you're very much with the different sort of more of the right-wing side of the Conservative Party. What were you shaking your head at?
Well, look, where I agree with Claire is that the government's plan and strategy isn't going to cut it, right? It is going to require them to go back to the Supreme Court, and that's not going to work. Where I disagree with Claire is something needs to be done, and it needs to be done urgently. If I had my way, any claimant would have all access to judicial claims to prevent or preclude removal to Rwanda disapplied all international treaties, the Human Rights Acts, and we would have to get planes in the air immediately. Now, I accept that Rwanda isn't the full picture, although, don't rule it out. Just because it can't take 200, it can only take 200, 500. Imagine you said, right, from January 1st, everybody that's coming on here, the first 500 to arrive are going to Rwanda straight away. The plane is waiting at Manson Airport in Kent to take them there. Well, would you want to be one of those first 500
but as soon as the first 500 across the channel, excellent, free for all, we're not going to be sent. Come back to you, Claire Pearsall. This is the thing. I completely agree with Sam when he says that, that you've got to do something. Is there an element with this, though? This is something must be done. This is something, let's do it. It looks good. We know this policy has huge support. It has huge support among Labour voters, probably not among, Lib Dems in the leafy shires who don't live with the consequences of this and have a little walk around with stickers saying refugees welcome. Well, that's lovely. But I do disagree with Sam on the sort of the idea that I want there to be some judicial role. I want there to be appeals. I feel very strongly about the rule of law. The trouble is our courts, the legal system, everything is now... It's the interpretation of the law is so different from what it used to be, so different from what most people would expect it to be, that actually you can't do anything in this country anymore because there's always a human rights right to be here.
I mean, I think that you have to look at what place international law has, and that's what the judiciary are going to be looking at. And there is some comment at the moment that if you remove all of the rights under international law, then it's actually a breach of the ministerial code. So you're looking at the Home Secretary, the Prime Minister, the Justice Secretary, the Attorney General, all falling foul of that. So whilst I agree that you can't allow people so many times to go to court on so many different occasions, I don't believe that you should disapply international law, because that just puts you down as a rogue state. We have the rule of law for a reason. It's there to protect us as well as other people. So no, I don't think you can do that. But this really is the government needing to do something. This looks like something. They are so hell-bent on doing it that they're not considering any other option. They're just blindsided.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, again, this is last chance saloon on this, isn't it, for the government? Thank you so much, Claire Pearsall.